Michael Van Zant hailed from Michigan, but traveled much of the world as a member of the United States Air Force. He met his future wife at a base in Japan and served 2 tours in Iraq. He and his wife had 3 children together, and everyone who knew him described him as a wonderful father. After 12 years in the service, he left active duty, but got a civilian job at Edwards Air Force Base in California, training security personnel. Michael and his wife decided to amicably end their marriage. They maintained a good relationship, and Michael remained active in his children's lives. Michael learned to live on his own and enter back into the dating scene. In 2016, he was approved for a mortgage to buy a house and looked forward to making a better home for his children than the apartment he had been renting. On March 5th, 2016, Michael drove to Hermosa Beach, California, approximately 2 hours away from his home in Lancaster. He had been invited by a friend from work to go out that weekend with a group of her friends and watch a televised mixed martial arts fight. After watching the match, the group decided to start bar hopping along Hermosa Beach's Pier Plaza. At 10:15, the group was waiting outside in line to get into a bar called American Junkie. Michael told the group that he was going to go to the liquor store next door to use the bathroom while they waited. He would never meet back up with the group. Michael's friends tried calling him throughout the night, but the calls went to voicemail. He did not respond to any texts. They continued to bar hop along Pier Plaza before heading back to their hotel. Michael's vehicle was still parked there. It was also still there the following morning. Michael's friends returned home, still unsure of where he had gone. Concern for Michael picked up on March 7th, when he began to miss obligations. He did not show up for work, and he failed to meet his son for a scheduled oral surgery with a necessary insurance form. When Michael's friend from work found out he never returned from Hermosa Beach, she filed a missing persons report with the local authorities. Friends and family members who went to look for Michael in Hermosa Beach were told that it was too soon to begin an investigation there. While waiting for the police to take Michael's disappearance seriously, those close to him began a grassroots search, canvassing the area with flyers and asking for information on Facebook. Pier Plaza has a high concentration of security cameras, and there were hopes that it would help solve the case. After a few false starts in attempting to find Michael in the hours of footage, a timeline of Michael's evening was pieced together. Security footage shows him with a group of friends in line at American Junkie, as well as him leaving to go to the liquor store. He is seen on camera going into the store and leaving after about a minute when he was not able to find a restroom there. While he was gone, his friends had decided to move on to a different bar. Michael is seen circling the plaza, apparently looking for his friends, and just missing them several times as they bar hopped. He returned to the liquor store later in the evening to purchase a small bottle of whiskey. While he is at the counter, he is seen trying to use his cell phone, but the screen does not light up, seeming to indicate that the phone was not working, possibly because the battery was dead. Michael is last seen on camera at 11:27 p.m., walking in the direction of the beach. Michael loved the water. He enjoyed swimming and water sports. His love of the water seemed to increase when he was drinking, with family members reporting multiple stories of Michael swimming in the ocean at night while intoxicated. This opened up the possibility that Michael had gone for a swim, then pulled out by a strong current and drowned. However, Michael had left his clothes and personal effects on the beach in his other instances of dangerous night swimming. Nothing belonging to Michael was found by the water after he went missing. Michael's brother Tyler made the decision in late 2016 to move from Baltimore to California so that he could be a part of Michael's children's lives. Michael's family hopes that one day, if Michael is not alive to rejoin his family, they can still discover what happened to him on that night in March. Brenda Jackson was an Army veteran who served a tour in Iraq. Unfortunately, she also faced violence on the home front. In August 2015, her 6 children were removed from her custody after a domestic violence incident with her husband, Antonio Jackson. There was such an extensive history of domestic violence in Brenda's marriage that when she failed to press charges against Antonio, the courts viewed their home as unsafe for the children. Brenda's oldest child was sent to live with their father, Brenda's first husband, in Texas, and the remaining 5 children were placed with Brenda's parents. Brenda was allowed supervised visits with the children. The separation from her children spurred Brenda to action. She separated from Antonio and eventually filed for divorce to show that she could provide her kids with a safe environment. In January 2016, she was living on her own in Park Forest, Illinois. Around 9 p.m. on January 3rd, Brenda's father dropped her off at her home on Arcadia Street. At approximately 10:30 that night, Brenda spoke on the phone with her mother. This would be the last known contact with Brenda. Brenda did not show up for work as a food service worker at Rich South High School the following morning. On January 5th, Brenda's mother and estranged husband reported her missing to the police. Inside her home, police found Brenda's purse, identification, and coat. The temperature in the area at that time consistently was barely above freezing, so it is unlikely that Brenda left home willingly without her jacket. 8 days after Brenda went missing, her mother received a phone call stating that she could find Brenda at a forest preserve not far from her home. A search was organized, but found no sign of her. There were reports of sightings of Brenda in nearby Chicago shortly after she disappeared, but they were never verified. 3 weeks after Brenda vanished, her children were removed from their grandparents' home and placed in foster homes. The Department of Children and Family Services made this decision after learning that Brenda's parents allowed the children's father, Antonio, to have supervised visits with his children. According to the department, this was a violation of the safety plan set in place for the children, and Brenda's parents did not fully understand the dangers of allowing such visits. According to an unconfirmed account from a family friend, Brenda's family only allowed these visits because they suspected him of playing a role in Brenda's disappearance and hoped that by seeing Antonio regularly, they could discover information about Brenda's case. While Brenda's father hopes that his daughter is still alive, her mother believes that she met with foul play. It would be too out of character for her daughter, who loved her children and never walked away from a challenge, to have simply run away and start a new life. She still hopes that she will find closure in Brenda's case so that she can give answers to her grandchildren. Thomas Messick Sr. served in the United States Army as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. He married his wife Beverly in 1959 and lived in Brunswick, New York. On November 15, 2015, he embarked on an annual hunting trip with 6 of his friends in the Adirondack Mountains. The group entered the Lake George Wild Forest near Lily Pond Road. Thomas was last seen around 10 a.m. The other hunters with him had planned to stalk deer and lead them back towards Thomas and another hunter, so that Thomas would not have to cover a large distance. The group was supposed to meet at a designated location at a designated time that afternoon. Thomas did not make it to the meetup. The hunting party alerted forest rangers, and they searched for Thomas from 4:30 in the afternoon until midnight. They were unsuccessful in finding Thomas or any of his belongings. While this hunting party had made this trip for 55 years, this was the first year they had gone to this particular location to hunt, so Thomas was not as familiar with the area as he was with his own hunting camp, where the trip usually took place. Thomas had lost one of his eyes in his early 20s due to an accident, so his vision was limited. He had almost skipped the outing in 2015 because he had just finished recovering from shingles. He also had a history of cardiac problems. This led to an early theory that Thomas had begun having a medical emergency and started walking for help before collapsing somewhere out of view. However, Thomas could not have made it very far in such condition. If this scenario did occur, either he or his body should have been discovered relatively quickly. The immediate area where he was last seen was searched thoroughly, and rangers spent 2 months searching outlying areas. Almost 300 trained searchers combed the area for Thomas a week after he went missing. Aerial searches of the area were also performed. Canine units, the FBI Quick Response Team, the Warren County Sheriff's Office, and many other agencies also helped in the search. Despite these extensive and expert efforts, no sign of Thomas was ever discovered anywhere in the woods. His fate remains a mystery. Margaret Haddigan had a fiery spirit. Independent and willful as a child, she surprisingly thrived in grueling but structured environments as an adult. She served as a volunteer firefighter in Warren Township, New Jersey. In 2001, she left her young daughter with her parents so that she could enlist in the United States Army. She served for 2 years before requiring a medical discharge. Upon returning to New Jersey, Margaret resumed firefighting, and through it met Tim McEnroe, who would become her husband and the father of Margaret's 2 youngest daughters. Margaret's intense personality posed challenges in her marriage, however. She and her husband were known to have intense arguments. On October 9th, 2006, they got into an argument so severe that police were called to their home for a domestic disturbance. By the time they arrived at the home, Margaret had left to go to her parents' home to calm down. She returned home later that night. The following day, October 10th, Margaret called Tim midday to ask him to pick up baby formula for their 5-month-old daughter. He stopped at home around 1:30 p.m. to drop it off, and then left to continue working the landscaping job he was at that day. This would be the last time anyone saw Margaret. When Tim returned home at 3 p.m., Margaret was not there. The couple's infant daughter was left at the house alone in her crib. Tim did not report his wife missing until October 12th. Police investigated every imaginable scenario that may result in a person going missing. Frustratingly, all of them have clues that make them possible, and all of them have clues that rule them out in this case. Could Margaret have run off to start a new life? She was known to go off to cool down after getting into confrontations. She had even gone off for several days a few times in her past. The only things that Margaret's husband reported missing from their home were a black duffel bag and a large amount of cash. He has not been consistent in reporting exactly how much cash, but it could have been up to $11,000. Margaret's friends and family argue that this scenario is impossible because of how fiercely protective Margaret was of her children. She had not run away since becoming a mother, and she certainly would not have left her infant daughter alone in her house. While Margaret was dedicated to all of her children, her youngest daughter had been born prematurely and required extra medical care. Margaret would not let her out of her sight for most of her young life, so it is almost inconceivable that she would have left her all alone. The theory that Margaret met with foul play also has holes in it. There was no sign of forced entry or any indication of a struggle inside of her home. Margaret was trained in martial arts and learned self-defense in the army. Her personality was such that she would fight if she were under attack, and her skill set would have given her a good chance at winning. Even if someone did overpower her, things should have been knocked out of place, and the fight she would have put up. If she did meet with foul play, it was most likely at the hands of someone she trusted, who she would have willingly let into the house and not had her guard up around. On Thanksgiving Day, roughly 6 weeks after Margaret vanished, police located an army t-shirt a mile away from Margaret's home. Tim identified it as belonging to his wife. Forensic examination of the shirt did not provide any helpful information to police. This was the last piece of physical evidence recovered in the case. In 2011, the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office named Tim McEnroe as a person of interest in his wife's disappearance. This was due to Tim's perceived lack of complete cooperation with authorities, and details on his account of the day Margaret went missing changing over time. He has never been charged in relation to the case. Margaret's oldest daughter, Sarah, who turned 21 in 2018, is a member of the United States Marine Corps and, like her mother, has served as a volunteer firefighter. Margaret's father passed away in 2013. Margaret's mother, Eileen, lights a candle for Margaret every week in the prayer garden at Our Lady of the Mount Catholic Church and holds a prayer service every year on the anniversary of her disappearance. Lonnie Green was a veteran of the United States Navy. In 2014, he was living in the borough of Bellevue, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. On December 4th of that year, 60-year-old Lonnie was spending the afternoon at the home of his brother, Benny, in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. Lonnie had been watching television when he suddenly stood up and told Benny that he would be back in 20 minutes. Benny did not press him for details as to where he was going. Lonnie left his brother's home, but did not return within 20 minutes. He has not been seen since. Lonnie's Social Security, bank account, and cell phone have not been used since he went missing. While he did have previous substance abuse problems, he was sober at the time he went missing. His family says he showed no signs of relapsing. Lonnie's family has been actively searching for him. They have made missing persons posters and hung them around the greater Pittsburgh area. Unfortunately, they do not have the financial resources to hire a private investigator or offer a reward to help generate leads in the case. Since Lonnie's finances were not utilized after the last time he was seen, his rent was obviously not paid. His landlord was understanding about the situation, but in March of 2015, Lonnie's family packed up all of his belongings and moved him out of his home. He remains missing, and there are few leads in the case.